right, welcome everyone. Welcome to my talk, how we build a new neutral foundation for our project, or also DIYing an association from scratch because you think a foundation-backed governance is great for your open source project. Yes, my name is Ariane Segelitz-Karsten. I am a business development manager at Cloud and Heat Technologies, and the biggest part of my work there is being ALASCA's community manager. And as you can guess from the title, we have built ALASCA. ALASCA is the foundation mentioned here because we needed an association for our open source project. And I hope that by sharing this journey with you today and specifically looking at everything community and governance related, this may be useful for you in case you are in a similar situation and are questioning your current governance, something like that. I would start with a brief look at the history of Yaook and ALASCA, just to give you some context of where we are currently. Yaook, that is a lifecycle management tool for OpenStack, so in the cloud infrastructure universe, was initially started by Cloud and Heat Technologies and StackIt in 2020. And so since two companies were already working on it, it just made sense to make it open source to begin with. And then the project grew pretty quickly with new contributors, with other companies as well, and so it was, after a year, time to assess the governance already. Governance of open source projects is a very, very important part because it's creating the frame for how decisions are made. I mean, we've heard something about this earlier today. It's about who has a say in what, who is in the lead, what roles there are, what tasks there are. And I think if the project is still small, this kind of regulates itself maybe. But as soon as it gets bigger, different parties are involved, you really need a set structure. And there are many different approaches that I will not go into right now. I can recommend this book, Open Source Projects Beyond Code, by John Mertig. I think this was released in 2022 or so. Has helped me a lot since I was new to open source projects in general, and he's talking about everything related to the things that are not code, and he also covers the governance. But anyway, for us, for Yaook, foundation-backed was the choice. And foundation-backed basically means that the open source project transitions to a foundation, and then you have different governance options. On the one hand, you could have the foundation as having control over everything, or the responsibilities are split, so the project keeps some control, for example, over the technical roadmap and any developments, and then the foundation may manage the rest. This is a really good idea. That's why we chose it for Yaook, because this foundation is neutral and vendor independent, so no single company can dominate or make unilateral changes, no drastic changes. Things like that cannot happen. I think a neutral foundation also provides some sense of trust and stability because, you know, there's not that one guy looking over the whole project, but it's like a neutral foundation. It also provides long-term support, so in case a company backs out, you still have this frame. And so it's also ideal for complex projects. So, but the issue that we had is that there wasn't a suited foundation in Europe, specifically focused on cloud infrastructures at that time. So the people who were discussing the governance back then said, well, fine, we will just create a foundation on our own. And that was when I came into all of this. My team lead back then said, hey, you know, Yaook, well, we want to build an association for this. Can you figure out how to do this? And I was like, yeah, I can look it up. I mean, how hard can it be? And technically, just very briefly, it wasn't as scary as you might think in bureaucratic Germany. You need 7 founders. This can be companies or private persons. You need to write the statutes, where you have plenty of templates out there that you can use. You have to elect an official board at the founders meeting. Then you run this through the tax office and the association register, and then you're already good to go. So this sounds very slim. Fees are relatively low as well. I think somewhere in the 2 digits. There is a bonus quest if you want to obtain nonprofit status. In Germany, you have to align with a legally approved cause from a specific paragraph in the legal text. There are like a couple of reasons or causes that may make you nonprofit. We picked research and development and education too, and this was approved, so we got this nonprofit status. So yeah, this sounds all very simple and quick to do. And our journey was to, well, let's start small, write the statutes, do maybe even a remote founding assembly. Let's build a simple landing page. We don't need much to start with. And somewhere along this journey, when we all got together, it kind of got out of control in the best way possible. We were starting to design logos, to develop a branding, and I remember 2 hours before we had this founding assembly, we were printing out our logo, sticking it to soda bottles, and this enthusiasm really set the mood for all future developments. So we did this founding in 2022, and then from there we were busy with internal developments of ALASCA, developments in terms of its governance, open source projects, all those things. We also have been doing a lot of marketing too, marketing and events. We've organized our own ALASCA Summit last year. We have the ALASCA Tech Talks. And today we are looking at 15 members, 3 open source projects, and a solid governance, including a technical steering committee. So this is the current situation and the path from there. And I would now take some of the learnings that I think would be helpful if you plan maybe something similar. If you're considering this, have a clear vision and the right people, because just dropping your project into this new foundation isn't enough. I feel like this sounds so obvious, but it's really crucial. Like, think about if this association is founded, what is it that you actually want to achieve? What expectation do you have from this step? What is this foundation actually for? This will help you even in the founding process, writing your statutes, finding founding members when you pitch the idea. It's critical for obtaining nonprofit status as well, and it guides all the next steps after the founding. And then also, founding a registered association is a very official thing. It's a long-term commitment, and that's why you really need the right people. You need to make sure that people are really committed to this, not just like from the heart and with their passion, but also in terms of resources, that they can invest time, and that they are willing to take responsibility, especially for important roles like the board. And so for ALASCA, our vision has been very clear from the beginning. Our goal is strengthening digital sovereignty, something that we've heard a very great keynote today. And our strategy is developing open source technologies that enable individuals and organizations to build and run their own cloud. And our key focus is operability, so ensuring that the technologies are really ready to use, or at least the projects are working towards this. Again, something that sounds kind of obvious, maybe even trivial, but stating this to us was so crucial to have this as a focus, because with every step that we do as the association, we can check, does this help us make those projects operable so that we can actually make an impact? And something minor to discuss is if you're open to accept other projects as well. For us, this was very clear because it helps the association grow, and we can even make even more impact in terms of digital sovereignty. Okay, and then what you want to do, which is probably the most important thing, is define the changes for the open source projects, which is also trickier than it looks. If you think about the changes, I would recommend starting with the foundation's governance, because this is a very complex thing to do. So you need people that are willing and able to push the process of defining those changes. Someone needs to do research. Someone needs to create proposals. You have to set up meetings and open discussions. You have to make decisions. You have to document them. You have to share them transparently. And you also want to make sure that those decisions do not change midway. You cannot say after 6 months, well, let's just do it all again. So really be thorough with that and take the time that it needs. So for us, the first step was forming a technical steering committee. This is not innovative. This is a classic thing. I think many open source projects have their own committees. Many foundations do, and it's really helpful because you don't have to have the board do everything or single people, but you have an official group for this. The TSC is responsible for all technical aspects of ALASCA. But again, before the TSC could start, we had to define the TSC scope, the number of people, we had to find an official election process, the election duration. We had to organize a meeting with all members for this election. And so you can see why this all are relatively lengthy processes. We had the board as the interim TSC, and the officially elected TSC, consisting of 5 people, started only in fall last year, so 2 years after the official founding. Yeah, because that's just how it is. It takes time. When you have this set up, what I would also recommend, very crucial, is involving the open source projects from the start. And I hope we did this well. When we knew that we would start founding an association, we made sure to give them regular updates. We attended Yaook's projects meetings and just told them what was going on, even the smaller steps like, hey, we're currently working on ALASCA's name, here are logo ideas, what do you think, just to make them feel involved and feel like they are part of it from the very beginning. When we had the founding meeting in 2022, we had project members there as well. When we started with discussions and workshops on everything project related, we made sure that project members are there too. Not just to make them feel included, but because their knowledge and their insights are super valuable. This must be a joint effort, nothing you just put onto them and say like, this is what we want from you. And so when you've done all of that, I think then you can start defining the changes for the open source projects once they enter the association. And these are various questions or areas that you should discuss. So the main thing for us is currently what is required from open source projects from a technical perspective. So when they apply or they are in the association already, they must bring not something to the table, but they have to work in a way that helps them be operable and that developments are smooth. So we are thinking, okay, what is the current state of your documentation? Do you have a contributing guide? Do you have onboarding guides? Do you have a release management? How big is your project? What is your mission? How does it align with the association? All of those things. And then you also want to define goals or mid-goals on the documentation, what you expect. You also have to discuss what happens to the roles within the projects. For example, do the roles change once they enter? Do owner rights change, something like that? You have to talk about who is responsible for the technical roadmap of the project. You also obviously have to discuss how your association is supporting the project, so what can they expect from that transition, very, very important. And so these are all the things that really matter. And the TSC is now working very intensely on this. And something that I learned along this way, or actually last week when I attended one of their meetings, is you don't want to overwhelm the project's community. So don't expect projects to work on everything at once. Don't be like, please do documentation, contributing guide, and release management till the end of the year, good luck. But you want to make realistic goals, give them recommendations, also get their feedback, like does it make sense for you to start with the documentation, provide supporting material, maybe templates, have regular meetings where they can share their progress, or also if they have concerns or difficulties, that they can share that with you. So this is also something that I would definitely make sure to do. Now we can look at what has changed for Yaook so far. To be honest, I was thinking about it, and it's not that much, at least for the community, and I think this is not necessarily a bad thing, probably the opposite. Changes in terms of work. ALASCA has not made any changes on the roles within the community, and I think it will stay this way, so whoever was an owner or maintainer, they will keep those roles. The only thing that we are probably expecting or are hoping for is that any open source projects are not single vendor projects, so that the contributors are relatively diverse. This is a goal that we have, but we are also supporting them on finding those new contributors. But this is very important for us. Yaook is also keeping the decision-making rights over its roadmap, as long as it aligns with ALASCA's overall mission. The TSC will check in on the progress from time to time, but also it's not strict monitoring or give us weekly updates or something. Like, you have to trust your open source project. They know what they're doing, and as long as there's the connection and you can exchange, that's probably fine. And I believe that changes directly will be noticed by the community once the project starts working actively towards those requirements. And yes, they have to find the people who do this, but I think eventually the effects will be positive for them as well. Then we can look at the changes in terms of community. Something that we really don't want is that the projects are just coexisting within this foundation. We want them to be embedded in a strong community with opportunities to exchange between the projects, with members, with the board, with the TSC. Like, they are supposed to feel that they are part of something big. And this is also something that we can now implement strategically. So, for example, if we have any cross-project developments, there might be exchange. There will be probably exchange in terms of learnings when they are all working towards those requirements, like, hey, how did you do the documentation? Stuff like that. I think these are all like such soft aspects, but I think they matter a lot for everyone to feel comfortable. Then also changes in terms of marketing. Being in the association, the projects definitely get more visibility, I would say. There are more opportunities to attend events, including also ALASCA's own summit last year. Something that we also provide is logos and colors and an overall branding, which I feel like is cool for the projects. They enjoy the process. We involve them in the whole design process. We just launched this website for our project Krake last week. It's live, and this whole process was done together with the community. They gave us the input. They helped us decide on colors. They checked if everything made sense, because we don't know that from the technical perspective especially. And everything they felt they need on a website, like community infos as well. So we are really making sure that, I mean, they are the experts. We are just doing the job, basically. And so, yeah, with these measures, with more visibility, that helps attract new contributors, gets the project out there for real-world testing, and I think this is also very positive. So all in all, not too much has changed in their active daily work, and this is what I think we also hoped for, because it's not our goal to disturb their work, but rather create an environment that supports them and also makes things a bit fun. Yeah. This is, I think, the main learnings we've gotten on the way that are worth sharing here. Maybe you're wondering, well, okay, you had those companies for the founding process, you can do all the marketing, I don't have that, what can I do? My personal assessment of this, I think having companies backing you up is not necessarily important. First of all, the registration process itself isn't expensive, it's doable. You don't need legal support. We just figured it out and it worked, so it's doable. I also thought about where the resources go that we have besides the obvious development. Most of it is marketing and community management. So things like website, LinkedIn posts, press events, the tech talks, the summit, this all eats a lot of time. And at the same time, if you don't have companies, maybe you don't need all of this in the beginning. So this kind of cancels each other out, if that makes sense. But then, of course, you have the internal development, the associations, governance, the TSC work, communication with members, exchange and collaboration with other communities also can be pretty time intense. But I would say if you don't have companies, you can still totally do it. If you have the right people. However, stick to the formal requirements. This is also a big thing, something that I had underestimated. The elections, the votings, defining the processes. Maybe you think like, okay, having a whole election process for the TSC is a bit much. Maybe we can just, talk about it and then people raise their hands and we're good to go. But it really helps to have those things structured, because otherwise you might end up in chaotic situations or have conflicts. So this is, regardless of your size, stick to those formal steps, even if it's annoying sometimes. And then a brief look again on the marketing. It feels overwhelming. Do I really need it? As I said, no, technically you don't. But I would say it does depend on your vision and your goals. For example, if you are dependent on your members, you might find that marketing is supportive for you. If you rely on donations, that's a big one, I think. You want to be visible, you want to attract donators. Also, if you need to find a lot of users for technologies, maybe a bit of marketing would help. For us, it has been very helpful for connecting with public institution politics, because this is part of our mission in terms of digital sovereignty. So for this impact, it's helpful. We are more visible at events also, and it's also easier for our company members to share their involvement. If they can, I don't know, show a logo, have templates, things like that. Let me check the time. And bonus tip, if you're doing something like this, thinking about branding, my recommendation would be, don't just create a logo, but maybe a whole story. Be creative with that, because it helps you so much to play with the marketing. Yaook, the husky, was there first. This is way back from the OpenStack times when people had to choose animals there for their tools. I remember we had various options, and it was the husky. And so when it came to Alaska, we thought, well, where does the husky live? In a cold region, so the husky moves to a cold region. We decided that all other animals or projects are animals as well in the cold region. Then if you come up with other elements, like different project stages, they can be named after cold elements. So this is very playful, and whatever you do, if you have the creativity, maybe think of something similar, just to be able to extend this in the future. And even something like a simple LinkedIn image for the new year, suddenly you can, create an actual picture. Now, coming to the final thoughts. Should you build your own association? It's a lot of fun. Like, it's really something to be proud of. It's, I think, very fulfilling for all of us. Everyone is so appreciative of the efforts, and it's really nice to have so many passionate people. I didn't expect this, to be honest. But you should ask yourself, is a foundation-backed approach really what you need? And are there existing foundations that might be suitable? It will save you a lot of work if there is. You can fully focus on your open source project. And then something that came to my mind in the keynote this morning is, depending on the cause and the bigger picture, maybe it's helpful to not have 1,000 scattered foundations, but rather put your project to something that exists, so that you can be part of something that already has this momentum and is already able to make changes. So this is something I would also consider. Otherwise, the upside, of course, when you have your own association, you kind of have some control. Of course, it isn't your project anymore, but you are part of the founding process. Your project learns to stand on its own feet, but you are kind of like walking besides it. But also keep in mind, an official association has voting rights. It's a legal entity, anything can happen. So who knows what it's going to be in 2 years. So if you consider this, you need a clear vision, as I mentioned, the long-term commitment, and also the right team to take on responsibilities. If you have those things, then maybe you're good to go. And with that, I would end my talk. I hope this was helpful. This is the first time we've shared this story this way, so I hope you learned something, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. If you bring a new project under the umbrella of a foundation, whom do I need to ask? Do I need to ask all the contributors? Does everybody have to agree?
This is something that we are still setting up, and something that should be communicated very transparently. There should be a process of how to apply, how you can, what information you have to provide. And then for us, for example, it's the technical steering committee who does the assessment, who does an internal official voting. And so, yeah, this needs to be a process like this, I would say. So, and I think this is very similar for many foundations out there. Somewhere they have their processes made for how to apply. But that's something we are still figuring out currently.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your experiences. Actually, we founded also our own association in the railway sector. So many of the experiences that you made are very similar. We founded it in Belgium, which I wouldn't recommend compared to founding something in Germany. Okay. But anyway, to the question is, I wonder, how do you actually gather new projects? Like, where does the initiative coming from? If you're actively searching for a new project, does it come from the board level, which is usually quite high or on a meta level, or is it a technical steering committee? How do you achieve that?
I would say we don't have a fixed process for that. Currently, or for the last projects, this happened very naturally because we had connections to those projects. But now that we are gaining more visibility, we are noticing that projects are actually approaching us. And so we are not attracting new projects currently. I think otherwise, when we attend events or something, we always tell them, hey, if you have a project, you can approach us. But there is not like the board having all this power over this, or the TSC. It's more like we all have this awareness, even the community management and the marketing, that this is something to look out for. And whenever someone finds an interesting project, we're just throwing it, sometimes even in the chat, and then someone says, well, I will get in touch with them. Yeah, something like that, I would say. But also the hope is that projects are also approaching us, but the growth has to be not too fast as well. So currently we are 3, we will be 4 soon, and so yeah. So does that help, or?
I would have an extra question. So yeah, that help. Perhaps it would be important for me to understand what the projects are before they join you. Are they internal projects with one company, one member company, so proprietary ones which then open up, or is it already pre-existing open source projects which you just pull in your association?
Yeah, it can be both actually. Okay. So for example, we have members in the association who say, well, we have a project, it's currently still closed source, we are thinking of transitioning, and we would like to do this with your support already. Or we also have projects that are open source, and they say, well, we are looking for some kind of umbrella. Maybe ALASCA is a match. Maybe another foundation is a match. So it's, can be very different cases.
A question, are the roles in the foundation board, the technical steering committee, are there those or volunteers, or do you have some paid positions as well?
It's kind of both. We are currently happy that the members of ALASCA are sending their employees to the association. So, for example, I'm a business development manager at Cloud and Heat, but Cloud and Heat says, do the community management. However, on the other side, we have also just received significant funding from the state of Saxony that allowed us to hire 2 actual employees at ALASCA for documentation, communication, and also it's like its own funding project. Might even allow us to hire some software developers. So with funding, there are definitely also options. Yeah.
With your experience and looking back in the past, what would you do differently if you have to do something like you give us a great experience, great feedback, but what would you do differently? Like you please.
Yeah, I thought about this. I think the whole procedure as it is, we are very happy with. Of course, sometimes small things you might have just done different. I would say be more patient and save your energy, because this process is so lengthy and can cause so many headaches, the bureaucratic stuff, but really I think the stress level was the biggest thing here, with setting up the founding assembly, and then you're figuring everything out. So nothing necessarily doing differently, but just being mentally prepared that this is a lot more complex than you would think.